Queen Elizabeth says she wants Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, to be known as Queen Consort when Prince Charles becomes king. She made the announcement in a message marking the 70th anniversary of her reign.
The British monarchy has weathered scandals, betrayals, and family divisions, but nothing could have prepared palace staff for the moment tensions allegedly exploded between Queen Camilla and Princess Anne. As stunned aides looked on, a heated confrontation reportedly pushed King Charles to his breaking point, forcing him to make a decision that could change the balance of power behind palace walls. But did this shocking clash expose cracks that have been hidden for years? Do you think King Charles made the right decision by taking decisive action against Camilla? Share your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal drama, please subscribe. Camilla crosses the line. The atmosphere inside the palace had already turned tense long before anyone raised their voice. A private meeting had officially ended, yet several senior aides remained in the corridor, waiting for King Charles's final approval on an important royal engagement. In the royal household, these events are far more than simple appearances. They decide who represents the crown, who stands in the spotlight, and who is trusted to carry the monarchy's image during difficult times. Every decision sends a message, and everyone in that hallway understood it. The tension grew when a last-minute change to the engagement schedule was questioned. To most people, changing the order of arrivals or speeches might seem like a minor adjustment. Inside the palace, however, every position, every entrance, and every public role reflects status, authority, and respect. Princess Anne calmly asked why the original plan had been changed without following the usual process. Her words were measured and respectful, but they carried enough weight to make the room fall silent. Queen Camilla immediately sensed something deeper behind Anne's question. It no longer sounded like someone asking for clarification. Instead, it felt like her judgment was being challenged in front of the very people whose loyalty mattered most. Even worse, the palace staff naturally looked toward Anne, not because she demanded attention, but because years of steady service had earned their respect. Without raising her voice or showing anger, Anne's calm confidence spoke louder than any heated argument ever could. That quiet confidence only made the situation more uncomfortable. The staff stood frozen, avoiding eye contact, knowing they were witnessing something far more serious than a disagreement over a schedule. This had become a battle over influence, pride, and the balance of power inside the royal household. Then everything changed in an instant. Unable to hide her frustration any longer, Camilla openly accused Anne of disrespecting her authority and embarrassing her during the official discussion. The sharp words echoed through the corridor, leaving the staff stunned. Anne barely reacted, remaining composed despite the public attack. King Charles, however, could not ignore what had just happened. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Realizing that the argument had crossed a dangerous line, he slammed his hand onto the table, immediately ending every whisper in the room. His voice carried authority as he ordered every member of staff to leave, leaving only Anne and Camilla behind. As the aides hurried away, one final glance revealed something unexpected. Charles was no longer trying to smooth over a family disagreement. His expression showed genuine anger directed at Camilla herself. In that moment, he understood that the real damage was not the argument. It was the fact that royal authority had visibly cracked in front of those sworn to protect it. What hidden incident pushed emotions to the breaking point before this explosive confrontation? And could one overlooked decision have triggered the biggest royal clash yet? Keep watching as we uncover the shocking incident that caused it all. The Hidden Palace Incident. Every lasting disagreement inside the royal family often begins with one quiet moment that seems unimportant at first. There are no raised voices, no dramatic scenes, and no public arguments. Yet those present immediately sense that something has shifted forever. For Queen Camilla and Princess Anne, many believe one such moment unfolded during a private rehearsal for an important state reception, where a routine adjustment unexpectedly became a test of influence. The rehearsal was about far more than practicing entrances and greetings. Every position in the procession carried meaning. Where someone stood, who entered first, and which attendants remained closest to senior royals, all reflected long-standing traditions that had been followed for generations. Inside the palace, these details were never treated as small matters. They quietly revealed who held trust, respect, and genuine authority. Camilla reportedly arrived believing the updated arrangements reflected her growing position within the royal household. Changes had been made to place some of her preferred attendants in more prominent positions, and the revised order appeared to acknowledge the influence she had steadily gained since becoming queen consort. To many, it may have looked like nothing more than a slight adjustment, but within royal circles, even the smallest change could carry enormous meaning. Princess Anne carefully studied the procession list before the rehearsal continued. It did not take long for her to notice what she believed was a serious problem. Those nearby quickly recognized the expression on Anne's face. She remained completely calm, yet experienced palace staff understood that she had spotted something that could not simply be ignored. Without raising her voice or creating unnecessary drama, Anne pointed out that the revised arrangement conflicted with established royal protocol. Her words were measured, respectful, and based entirely on tradition rather than personal opinion. She did not criticize Camilla directly. Instead, she focused only on protecting the rules that had guided official royal ceremonies for decades. That calm approach made the moment even more uncomfortable. Camilla reportedly responded with a polite smile, but those watching noticed the tension beneath it. The correction had taken place in front of palace staff whose respect she had hoped to strengthen. Even worse, the officials responsible for organizing the ceremony immediately accepted Anne's guidance without waiting for further approval. Their quick response quietly revealed whose judgment carried greater weight when tradition was at stake. The situation became even more painful afterward. According to reports, King Charles later expressed appreciation to Anne for catching the protocol issue before it could affect the reception. As word of that private conversation quietly spread among senior household staff, Camilla reportedly realized that the king's support had gone to Anne rather than to her revised plans. What had started as a simple correction now felt deeply personal, leaving a lasting wound that changed how she viewed every future disagreement. But that painful rehearsal was only the beginning. The tension refused to disappear, and before long, Anne would confront Camilla once again in an even more surprising showdown. What pushed the Princess Royal to challenge the Queen Consort a second time? And did that confrontation change everything inside the palace? Stay glued to your screen. Duty versus authority. The second confrontation did not begin with raised voices or angry words. It started with a heavy silence that seemed to fill every corner of the room. Princess Anne quietly placed her briefing papers on the table while the palace staff exchanged nervous glances. Everyone could sense that something was about to happen. Queen Camilla noticed the tension too, and King Charles looked from one woman to the other with growing concern, as though he already feared the meeting was about to fall apart. What should have been a routine discussion suddenly became something much bigger. Anne calmly asked why an important palace instruction had been changed without her office being told first. It sounded like a simple question, but inside the royal household, it carried enormous weight. The order affected official duties, staff responsibilities, and the careful balance of authority within the palace. If changes could be made without proper communication, it raised serious questions about who was truly making decisions behind the scenes. Before King Charles had the chance to explain or calm the situation, Camilla stepped in. Instead of allowing the king to handle the matter, she spoke directly to Anne. The unexpected move instantly changed the atmosphere. Palace staff watched in complete silence, realizing they were no longer witnessing an ordinary disagreement. They were watching two of the most powerful women in the royal family challenge each other's authority. At first, Camilla's voice remained calm and measured, but with every sentence, her frustration became harder to hide. She accused Anne of never fully accepting her place within the monarchy. According to Camilla, Anne had spent years using royal rules and traditions to quietly question her position while pretending everything was simply about protocol. Anne refused to match Camilla's emotion. She remained perfectly composed, meeting every accusation with calm silence. Her steady expression spoke louder than any angry reply could have. The more Anne stayed in control, the more emotional Camilla appeared, creating a striking contrast that everyone in the room could see. Anne understood exactly what was at stake. Every servant, advisor, and palace official was listening carefully. One emotional response could turn a private disagreement into a damaging royal spectacle. Instead, she chose discipline over drama, allowing Camilla's words to echo through the silent room without interruption. Finally, Camilla claimed that Anne had spent years hiding criticism behind her devotion to duty, making others feel unwelcome while pretending she was only protecting the monarchy. Anne allowed the accusation to settle before calmly delivering a reply that stopped the room cold. "Duty is exactly what has kept the crown standing." The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of decades of service, sacrifice, and loyalty. No one spoke. Every eye slowly turned toward King Charles, waiting to see how he would respond to the growing divide between his wife and his sister. But how would King Charles react after witnessing this explosive clash? And would his decision change the future of the royal family forever? Keep watching to find out. King's breaking point. The room fell into complete silence the moment King Charles pushed back his chair so suddenly that it scraped loudly across the floor. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. The sharp sound seemed to snap everyone out of the shock that had frozen the room. His expression had changed completely. This was no longer a husband trying to calm a heated family argument. This was the monarch stepping forward to stop a situation that threatened the dignity of the crown itself. Camilla looked at him with confidence, almost expecting him to defend her, as he had done so many times before. She may have believed he would accuse Princess Anne of pushing the confrontation too far or ask everyone to forget what had happened. But the look on Charles's face quickly shattered those expectations. There was no comfort waiting for her. Instead, she saw something far more unsettling. She saw a king quietly reaching a decision that could change everything. Inside the royal family, personal disagreements rarely stay private for long. Every emotional clash eventually becomes a question of leadership, discipline, and public trust. The monarchy survives because its leader knows when to draw a firm line, even when doing so brings personal pain. Charles suddenly found himself trapped between two impossible choices. He could shield the woman he loved from embarrassment, or he could protect the institution he had spent his entire life preparing to lead. Saving one seemed certain to wound the other. Still carrying the weight of the confrontation, Charles withdrew to his private study. The voices from the earlier exchange echoed in his mind as a senior palace official quietly entered with a formal written report describing everything staff members had witnessed. The document was prepared so senior royal officials would have an accurate record of events, leaving little room for misunderstanding or rumor. What made the report especially powerful was not dramatic language or emotional accusations. It was its calm, factual tone. Every important detail had been carefully recorded, from Camilla's harsh remarks to Anne's remarkable self-control, the staff members who witnessed the confrontation, and the moment Charles ordered everyone to leave the room. The simple facts painted a picture that was difficult to ignore. Charles slowly looked over the pages, knowing that what had happened was no longer just a painful family disagreement. Palace employees had watched a senior royal lose control, while another remained calm under pressure. If nothing followed such a public incident, it could send a dangerous message that discipline inside the monarchy depended on personal relationships rather than responsibility. Meanwhile, Anne stayed away from the growing drama. She never demanded punishment, never asked others to defend her, and never tried to turn the incident into a campaign against Camilla. Her quiet dignity only made the contrast even stronger. Charles understood that better than anyone. He had stood beside Camilla through years of criticism, but deep down he also knew one painful truth. Love might explain her actions, yet it could never erase the damage they had caused. But what was King Charles's final decisive decision, and would it change the future of the monarchy forever? Stay tuned. The King's final decision. King Charles did not make a dramatic announcement. There was no heated meeting, no public statement, and no long explanation. Instead, he made one quiet decision that carried enormous weight inside the palace.
The King and Queen just don't want to live above the shop. They prefer to where they have lived for more than 20 years, just across the road from the palace.
After reviewing everything that had happened, he calmly set the report aside and instructed the household secretary to remove Queen Camilla from overseeing the final plans for the upcoming royal engagement. That responsibility would now belong to Princess Anne. To many people, it might have sounded like a routine change. But inside the royal household, deciding who controls the ceremonial order means deciding who controls the image of the monarchy. Every entrance, every speech, every position, and every movement during a public event is carefully planned. The person trusted to manage those details is also trusted to protect the crown's reputation. By handing that responsibility to Anne, Charles sent a message that everyone inside the palace immediately understood. The household secretary accepted the instruction without questioning it. That quiet acceptance spoke volumes. No one argued. No one asked for an explanation. The decision had already moved beyond personal feelings. It had become an official palace order, and everyone knew it. The effects spread quickly through the royal residence. Palace conflicts do not always explode into loud arguments. More often, they appear in subtle ways. A familiar face disappears from an important meeting. A seat at the table is quietly reassigned. Invitations change. Conversations suddenly stop when someone enters the room. Those silent changes often speak louder than any public announcement ever could. For Camilla, the moment arrived through a simple briefing document. An aide entered her sitting room with the updated plans, carefully avoiding eye contact as he handed over the papers. The new household instructions confirmed that Princess Anne would now supervise the ceremonial arrangements for the major royal event. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary administrative update. In reality, it meant that someone else had been trusted with a role Camilla had expected to keep. She slowly read the document from beginning to end. Then she looked at it again, almost as though the words might somehow change. There were no harsh criticisms, no accusations. The earlier confrontation was not even mentioned, yet the message could not have been clearer. Her authority had been quietly reduced, and Anne had been placed at the center instead. Sometimes the deepest punishment is not public humiliation. Sometimes it is simply being removed without a single angry word, leaving everyone else to understand exactly what has happened. But how would Camilla respond after realizing her influence had been quietly stripped away? Would she accept Charles's decision, or was an even bigger confrontation about to shake the palace once again? Let's uncover the full story. Camilla, final reaction. The correction had already been made, and the palace had quietly moved on. But for Queen Camilla, the emotional impact was only beginning. The embarrassment she had felt in front of staff quickly turned into something much heavier. It was no longer just about a disagreement over royal procedure. It had become a painful reminder that influence inside the palace could disappear without a single public argument. Unlike a loud confrontation, this setback came in complete silence. No one openly challenged her authority. No one argued with her decisions. Instead, palace officials simply followed.
With Buckingham Palace the ultimate symbol of the British monarchy, but the King and Queen won't be moving in.
The updated instructions as though they had always been the correct ones. That silent obedience sent a message that hurt far more than harsh words ever could. King Charles understood exactly what had happened. As he walked through the palace corridors toward Camilla's private room, he reportedly knew the decision he had approved would not be easy to explain. He was not simply heading toward an uncomfortable conversation with his wife. He was walking into a moment that could test both his marriage and his responsibility as monarch. Being king meant carrying two very different roles at once. One required him to protect the woman he loved. The other demanded that he protect the dignity and stability of the crown above everything else. Those two duties had suddenly collided, forcing him to make a choice that neither of them would easily forget. Inside her room, Camilla sat quietly with the official briefing papers in front of her. She slowly folded the document, then folded it again, as though trying to control the emotions building inside her. Finally, she asked one simple question. Had Princess Anne requested the change? The palace aide hesitated before answering. That brief pause revealed that the truth would be difficult to hear. When the response finally came, it changed everything. The revised order had not been Anne's decision. It had come directly from King Charles himself. That answer cut far deeper than Anne's earlier correction ever could. Anne may have defended royal tradition, but Charles had personally approved the final decision. To Camilla, it felt as though her own husband had not only refused to defend her, but had officially overruled her judgment. She said very little after hearing the truth. The silence inside the room became almost impossible to ignore. Although she still carried the title of Queen Consort and would continue appearing beside Charles during public events, the latest changes suggested that Princess Anne had been trusted with responsibilities that Camilla no longer controlled. That difference made the situation feel deeply personal. When Charles finally entered the room alone, there were no palace advisors, no senior officials, and no royal ceremony to hide behind. He quietly closed the door, leaving only a husband and wife facing a conversation neither wanted but both knew could no longer be avoided. Camilla demanded to know why Anne had been protected while she had been left to carry the embarrassment. Charles listened carefully, saying almost nothing at first. Every second of silence seemed to make the room feel heavier, as though he understood that one careless sentence could permanently damage what remained between them. But why did Charles choose duty over loyalty to his own wife? What reason was powerful enough to make the king risk peace inside his own marriage? Let's delve into the details. Anne earned his trust. The tension that filled the palace after the confrontation refused to disappear. Once the room had emptied, King Charles made one thing unmistakably clear. In his eyes, Princess Anne had never been the person who needed defending. The real victim was the monarchy itself. What troubled him most was not the argument between two senior royals, but the fact that palace staff had witnessed disorder at the very top of the institution. For a few painful moments, confusion had replaced authority, and that was something a king could never afford to ignore. Charles admitted to himself that he had hesitated before stepping in. That brief delay allowed the confrontation to grow, leaving staff members to watch a scene that should never have unfolded inside the palace. To Charles, leadership meant restoring order immediately, and he believed he had fallen short of that responsibility. His words struck Camilla harder than any angry response could have. As she listened, her frustration slowly gave way to regret. She confessed that her emotions had not come from that single disagreement alone. For years, she had quietly carried the feeling that she would never truly belong in the royal family. Every time she stood beside Anne, she felt measured against someone whose lifelong devotion to duty seemed impossible to match. Anne never needed to criticize her. Her calm confidence alone was enough to make Camilla question herself. Charles understood that this pain had been building for a long time, but he also knew it could not excuse what had happened. Personal feelings could never be allowed to damage the reputation of the crown. There was another reason Charles found the situation so serious. Princess Anne was not simply his sister. Over the years, she had earned a reputation as one of the most dependable members of the royal family. While others often found themselves surrounded by headlines and controversy, Anne quietly focused on her responsibilities, carrying out hundreds of public engagements and supporting countless charities, military groups, and national causes with remarkable consistency. She had become known as someone who valued hard work over attention.
To many, the princess who symbolizes the best of the royal family.
Palace staff respected her because she rarely complained and always placed duty before comfort. Even Charles had come to rely on her honest advice. Unlike those who simply agreed with him, Anne spoke openly, offering practical guidance even when the truth was difficult to hear. Through family crises, state occasions, and the passing of the late queen, she had remained a steady source of strength. That unwavering loyalty made Charles's decision even more painful. He believed the trust Anne had built over decades deserved recognition, and restoring confidence inside the palace had become essential. Looking directly at Camilla, he quietly told her there was only one way to begin repairing the damage. Would Camilla put aside her pride and offer the apology Charles demanded, or was another shocking twist waiting behind closed palace doors? Stay tuned. The royal apology. In the days after the confrontation, all eyes turned to Princess Anne as she carried out her next official engagement. It was her first public appearance since the clash inside the palace, and people were watching for any sign that the argument had shaken her. Yet Anne appeared exactly as she always had. She greeted people with a calm smile, focused on her duties, and never hinted at the storm that had unfolded behind palace walls. That quiet confidence only contrasted even more clearly. While rumors continued to spread, Anne allowed her actions to speak louder than any explanation ever could. Camilla, however, remained out of sight. Her absence from several important palace arrangements immediately caught attention. The palace made only small adjustments to the official schedule without offering detailed explanations, but the changes were enough to convince many observers that something significant had happened. Inside the palace, staff members became unusually careful with every conversation. Nobody offered private comments or leaked emotional details. The silence itself became part of the story. King Charles knew the situation could not be allowed to grow worse. Public appearances could restore confidence, but they could not repair the personal damage that had already been done. Only one thing could begin to heal the divide. Camilla needed to face Anne directly. The meeting was arranged in one of the palace's smaller reception rooms. No advisors were standing nearby, no members of staff, and no audience waiting outside the door. Charles wanted the conversation to be honest, private, and impossible to avoid. The room felt heavy with emotion as Anne quietly entered. She showed no sign of triumph, no desire to remind anyone of what had happened. Her only concern was protecting the dignity of the monarchy. Camilla looked visibly uncomfortable. For perhaps the first time since becoming queen, she found herself searching for words that did not come easily. Pride had carried her through many difficult moments in life, but pride offered no protection now. After several long seconds of silence, she finally began to speak. With a trembling voice, Camilla admitted that she had allowed her emotions to control her judgment. She acknowledged that speaking harshly to Anne in front of palace staff had been wrong, and accepted that her actions had embarrassed not only Anne, but also the institution they both represented. She confessed that years of insecurity, pressure, and feeling compared with others had built up inside her, until they finally exploded in a single moment she deeply regretted. Anne listened without interrupting. She never demanded further explanations or attempted to make Camilla feel smaller. When the apology ended, Anne calmly accepted it, reminding her that personal disagreements should never be allowed to overshadow royal duty. Respect, she explained, is earned through self-control, especially during difficult moments. Charles watched the exchange in silence before quietly confirming that this apology was not simply about ending an argument. It was about restoring trust, rebuilding discipline, and reminding everyone that no individual, regardless of title, could ever place personal emotions above the responsibility of serving the crown. So, what do you think of King Charles's decisive decision against Camilla? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.